This new military sim is insane. It lets you have 254 players in one game. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is a new military sim / battlefield style game where you're going to be playing in 127 versus 127 players. Now, this game is very similar to Squad, but much more user-friendly. You've got all your stereotypical things you would expect in Squad, with squads of about 8 players. You've got different classes, you've got different roles, you've got a whole bunch of different weapons and other things like that, but more importantly, you have VoIP. If you don't know what VoIP is, just listen to this. VoIP is basically just you being able to talk to people around you. And with 127 players running around, and you also being able to hear the enemy team when you kill them.
Oh.
I was pulling the nade out right
Hey, guess what? You got shit on.
Things tend to get a little crazy. So let's start out by just breaking down what the game actually is. Well, in BattleBit Remastered, the first thing you're going to notice is that the graphics aren't exactly the most appealing. And that's understandable because this game lets you have an insane amount of players in one lobby and with basically no lag. Yes, you might have a high ping if you're on a farther connected server, but in my experience, I was getting incredibly good ping with next to no lag while playing this game. That is just something that we have never really seen before on this scale. To have over 250 players connected on one single server and not have lag is just unconceivable to me, and to me is just an absolute networking dream. Now, this game is supposed to be like Squad in the sense that you have those 8-player squad teams with all the different roles like your medic, your assault, your engineer, your support, and your recon, as well as squad leaders. However, people don't really pay that much attention to it, at least at this point in time, because there really isn't a whole lot of help to being very communicative with your team. So what I mean by this is when there's 127 people shooting at you and you're a group of 8 out of 127, it's very hard to put yourself in a situation where you're able to be effective as a group of 8. However, it's not impossible. I actually did find a couple of guys that I was able to play with, and we had a really good time playing as our own little group and going off on little missions on the side. You know, there's one part where we actually went on a boat craft and we went all the way around the back of the map to capture a hard point, which I'll talk about the game modes in just a second. And we're able to turn a game around for our team by making sure we were able to hold a point with just a few people while all of their main players were focusing on a different one and our team was trying to hold the line. So don't think that just because you're in a group of 5 or 6, you can't do anything meaningful. It's just if you queue with randoms. Unlike Squad, you shouldn't really expect a whole lot of coordination. You're going to get more like a battlefield style of coordination if you queue with randoms, where you might try to pick a medic and you might try to help out your team. But realistically, you're there to help the entire group. You know, you're doing your own kind of a thing. You're not necessarily sticking with your squad, and there isn't going to be a lot of communication between you guys. However, I will say that the intensity of the battles can just be ridiculous. Sometimes you've got situations where there is 50, 60, 100 enemies in front of you trying to push down a small bridge. There's grenades flying everywhere, rockets are flying, artillery strikes, you know, people are all firing their guns. It's just a hail of bullets, and it is just a bloodbath. There's a meme kind of going around right now with the game that basically just says, once again, back into the meat grinder, because that's what you're doing, depending on the class you're playing. And it's not bad. It's actually fun, because going into the meat grinder and trying to get through that massive hail of bullets in order to push back the enemy team feels meaningful and impactful when you do actually manage to do it, or you throw a grenade over your head and into the enemy line and get 6 or 7 kills, or even just 1, because at the end of the day, you're helping your team push back the enemy. The best part about taking down your opponents, however, in my opinion, is the fact that they automatically get their VoIP turned on, which can be turned off entirely if you want, so don't be worried about that. People don't have to hear you talk if you don't want them to. But by default, it's set that whenever you die, it opens to open voice chat, and people don't realize it, so they'll curse you out or they'll freak out when they die. They'll be like, really? How did that guy kill me? What is he, cheating? Or, you know, some crazy thing like you hear in many other shooter games. And I think it's just a great addition for this massive of a fun, good time style game. Now, as far as the game modes go, you really got 2 main game modes for the 127 versus 127 mode, which is the main mode most people are going to be playing this for. And in that mode, the 2 main game modes seem to be be a push style of map where, you've got to capture a point and hold the 2 points behind you, and then it'll open up another point in front of you, and you push closer and closer towards the enemy's base. If you've ever played Squad or anything like that, then you know what I'm talking about. But basically, this is just a push style mode like you would see in any shooter game where you've got a large team versus a large team. You take the next point, it opens up the next point, but you've got to defend the point you just took while you take the following point, except there's 3 points going on at any given time instead of just those 2. The other mode you've got available to you, which seems to be a little bit more user-friendly and a little bit more chaotic, is the domination style game mode. And in this mode, it's literally just domination. There's a bunch of points around the map at important locations. You capture them, it reduces your enemy's tickets. If their tickets hit 0 first, you win. Every time you get a kill, you take out a ticket as well. So if you give up, and you don't wait to get revived by a teammate, you'll lose a ticket for your team. So it's a massive game, and we're talking thousands and thousands of tickets here. So just killing one person isn't the most impactful thing. But if you're constantly killing people or you're helping to take a point, you'll start seeing their tickets go down extremely fast. I think I saw it at one point going at like 70 or 80 tickets per minute. And in a 20 or 30 minute game, even if you have 3,000 tickets, that is a massive detriment to your team when people are constantly giving up and trying to push into the opponent's territory. Now, aside from 127 versus the 127 mode, they are planning to have a 64 versus 64 mode, a 32 versus 32 mode, a 16 versus 16, and an 8 versus 8 mode. To be honest with you, I'm not going to talk about these modes too much, since at the end of the day, if you wanted that kind of experience, you could just go play Battlefield, you could go play Call of Duty, you could go play a different military sim that probably has a little bit better gunplay and things like that. So I'm just going to leave that out of this category for now, since it's not really why people are playing this game in the first place. Now, I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm just going to kind of quickly summarize a few of the other important topics that you should know about before looking more into this game and seeing if it's something you want to play. First up is that there are vehicles. There's planned to be land and sea vehicles, which are already in the game. You've got your tanks, you've got your anti-personnel carriers, you've got your boats, all that good stuff. And there are not currently, as far as I can tell, plans to be any air vehicles. However, there is air support, which you can call in by getting squad points and doing objectives and helping your squad out. It's like artillery, for an example, or a bombing run, things like that. Another thing to note is that the vast majority of the environment is destructible on some level. You can actually just take a sledgehammer in and sledge out a couple of bricks from a building and then shoot through that hole in the building, which is a really fun mechanic to engage with, as you can set up hard points where your team is spawning there or something like that, and you're able to actually shoot through that hole in order to create a gap where you have the advantage, say if you're a sniper or something like that, and they have a very small window where they can shoot you from. It's really fun to engage with, and it's just a fun mechanic in general, but entire buildings can also crumble on top of you, which results in you dying. So that is just another fun thing about the whole destroyable environments, which is just something we don't see in games much, especially in games with this many players. Next is that there is currently 35 weapons available to you. Now, to get all of these weapons, you'll have to actually level up your account by just simply playing the game, getting kills, healing people if you're a medic, anything that contributes to helping you win a game. But that's not the only thing, as each gun also has a wide variety of attachments, which you can only unlock by getting kills with that gun, and the attachments are pretty impactful sometimes. You've got lasers, you've got flashlights, you've got different sights, all sorts of different things, all the fun things you would want to see in a military sim or in a regular like Call of Duty style game where you've got all these attachments you can put on your gun to change the way it functions and make it a little bit better. But you're going to have to get the kills with the base version of that weapon in order to start unlocking those. This is something that I think will really help with the progression of the game, but I did notice they also have a prestige system, which is something you might be interested in if you do end up really enjoying it as well. So there should be plenty of replayability value for you if you end up getting into this and really enjoying it. Now, the last thing I want to mention to you guys is really just what you can expect going into the game. And the reality is that, again, people aren't here to play super tactical most of the time. They're here to have fun, just jump into a game, start shooting, maybe go on a flanking run, throw some grenades and get some kills, maybe blow up a building. It's a fun game, and people aren't going to be taking it nearly as serious as something like Squad. So it leans more towards like the Battlefield audience in that way, in the sense that it's meant to be more enjoyable to the general public than it is to be super hyper realistic. The quote unquote realistic elements come in the form of the fact that there's vehicles, you've got so many players on a game where you really just don't get to see that anywhere else. You know, you've got realistic gun physics in the sense that every bullet seems to have an actual travel time. It has drop. These maps can get really massive too. So sometimes you're shooting incredibly far distances and it's very hard to land a shot. You know, headshots pretty much always one shot kill, and time to kill is usually 2 to 3 bullets at most, depending on the gun you're using. But either way, the game is really, really, really fun, and right now they're planning to do open alpha tests periodically until their full release, which is planned sometime this spring. So do be on the lookout for the game. I don't think it'll be that much to purchase, and I do think the game is actually really easy to run on most people's PCs, especially for how insane the game is and with how many players are in it. I can't stress enough how cool it is to see 127 people charging over a hill into their deaths against another 127 people. It is such a fun experience. And if you don't buy the game, I recommend you at least try to jump into one of the alpha tests just to get an idea as to what it's like and experience it for yourself, as it's just such a fun experience to have. Either way though, thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content about not just this game, but other military sims and other survival games, as we cover that all the time on our channel. We do actually plan on making another video for this game called Should You Buy, where we'll go in depth about the game mechanics and talk more about it once it's in early access. However, until then, I want to give a big shout out to our Platinum and Above channel members, which include Caustic FPV, Jonathan S, and Jim Phillips. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Game Advisor, and I'll see you next time.